Lesson 19. Complex sentence. Complex sentence. What is a complex sentence? A complex sentence is a sentence that combines one independent clause with at least one dependent clause. A complex sentence is a sentence that combines one independent clause with at least one dependent clause. It means a complex sentence is composed of an independent clause and a dependent clause. It composed of two clauses, one dependent and one independent. In the previous lessons, we learned compound sentences. Compound sentences. We said and we learned compound sentences are composed of what? Of two independent clauses. Compound sentences are composed of two independent clauses, but complex sentence is composed of one independent clause and one dependent clause. What is a clause? What is a clause? A clause is a group of words. A clause is a group of words that has both a subject and a verb. Has both subject and verb. Clause is a group of words that has both a subject and a verb. A subject and a verb. Number one, an independent clause. An independent clause forms a complete thought. An independent clause forms a complete thought. It is a complete thought. It is a complete idea. It is a complete sentence. But a dependent clause is also called subordinating clause. It also called subordinating clause. It doesn't form a complete thought. It doesn't form a complete thought. And it is dependent. It is dependent upon an dependent clause for meaning. It means the meaning of a dependent clause. The meaning of a dependent clause is dependent on the independent clause. I know it's confusing. The meaning of a dependent clause, the meaning of a dependent clause is reliant or is dependent on the independent clause, because a dependent clause does not form a complete thought, And a dependent clause is also called a subordinating clause because it contains what? A subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunction. In the previous lesson, we learned coordinating conjunctions. But now, we are learning subordinating conjunctions. Example. Although Kani had some doubts, she found the courses very useful. Although is what? It is a subordinating conjunction. Although Kani had some doubts, therefore it is a subordinating clause. Subordinating clause is a dependent clause. The clause that contains a subordinating conjunction is called a subordinating clause. And we know subordinating clauses are dependent clause. They are dependent clause. She found the courses very useful. This is what? This is an independent clause. It forms a complete thought. She found the courses very useful. But here, although Kanye had some doubts, although Kanye has had some doubts, the meaning is not complete, and it doesn't form a complete thought. It doesn't form a complete thought. The meaning of this clause, the meaning of the subordinating clause, is reliant or is dependent on the independent clause. The above example is a complex sentence. It is a complex sentence. It has a dependent clause. It has a dependent clause. Kani is the subject of the dependent clause, and the verb is had. And Kani is the subject of the dependent clause. Had is the verb, followed by an independent clause. Followed by an independent clause. The subject of the independent clause is the pronoun she, the pronoun she, and the verb is found. The verb is found, and it forms a complete thought. It forms a complete thought. Subordinating conjunctions. What are subordinating conjunctions? Here is some example of the subordinating conjunctions. There are more than this, but these are the most important subordinating conjunctions. Although, and even though, because, since, unless, when, where's, which, while, who, whoever, after, whose. These are the most common or important subordinating conjunctions. Example: the president chose people. The president chose people who would help him make good decisions. Who would help him make good decisions. The president chose people who would help him make good decisions. As we said, who is what? Who is a? Here is what? Who is a subordinating conjunction. Who is also a relative pronoun, but here it is a subordinating conjunction. Therefore, the sentence contains the subordinating conjunction is what? Is a subordinating clause. It is a subordinating clause. And we know it is a independent clause. It expresses a complete thought, but it doesn't form a complete thought. The meaning of this clause is dependent on this clause. And this is a complex sentence. This is a complex sentence. When the food arrived, the children ate everything. The children ate everything. When the food arrived, this is the subordinating conjunction. Therefore, this is the subordinating clause, dependent clause. And this is the independent clause. It contains what? Subject and verb. Subject and verb. Therefore, it is what? It is a complex sentence. While he waited at the train station, Joe realized that the train was late. This is the subordinating conjunction. And we know this is the subordinating clause. This is the dependent clause. It has subject and verb. And this is the independent clause. This expresses a complete thought. But the subordinating clause is not what? Is not expressing or does not express a complete thought. The meaning of this clause is reliant or dependent on this clause. Another example. He studied hard. He studied hard because he wanted to go to medical school. Because he wanted to go to medical school. Because is what? Because is a subordinating conjunction which creates a subordinating clause. A subordinating clause. And or a dependent clause. A dependent clause. And we know this is the independent clause. How do you know this is the independent clause? Because it doesn't contain a subordinating conjunction. It doesn't contain a subordinating conjunction. Because he wanted to go to a medical school is a dependent clause and does not form a complete thought. But the independent clause forms a complete thought. The teacher asked for his homework after she noticed it missing. After she noticed it missing. The teacher asked for his homework. After is what? After is a subordinating conjunction. After is a subordinating conjunction. And we know the clause that contains a subordinating conjunction is what? Is a dependent clause. Is a dependent clause which does not form a complete thought. Which does not form a complete thought. The meaning is not completed. It doesn't have a complete meaning. The meaning of this clause is dependent on the independent clause. This is the independent clause. Even though exactly have the same meaning, even though exactly has the same meaning as although and even though have the same meaning. Even though I would rather go to the beach, I went to the library to study. Even though I would rather go to the beach, I went to the library. This is a subordinating conjunction. This is a subordinating conjunction. And we know the clause that contains a subordinating conjunction is called a dependent clause. Is called a dependent clause. And the clause that does not contain a subordinating conjunction is called an independent clause. Both the dependent and the independent clause form a complex sentence. A complex sentence.